Welcome to Growth Happens Here. It's a conversation with content designed to stimulate your thinking and provide actionable takeaways for founders, owners, and CEOs committed to business and personal growth. For those of you joining for the first time, I'm Michael Flannery, a Vistage Chair in the greater Denver area. I lead a peer advisory group of incredibly driven founders, owners, and CEOs committed to doing the hard but extremely gratifying work of solving the tough challenges and achieving their goals and visions together, because group dynamics are growth accelerators, and leaders love pressing the growth accelerator. I'm joined today by AmyK Hutchens, best-selling author, speaker, Fortune-level consultant. AmyK is all about personal and professional growth. You can learn more about AmyK at shegetsit.com. Welcome, AmyK. So great to have you on Growth Happens Here.
Oh, I love it. I'm such a fan of growth and growth acceleration and all the tools that go with it. So thanks for having me.
So great to have you on Growth Happens Here. So let's just dive right in. Okay, great. One of your well-known assertions, in this case, I would say simple but profound truths, is that life happens one conversation at a time. Love that. So we live in such a fast-paced world where you get 60 seconds to say something that matters. How can we think about and apply that profound truth in a way that begins to transform our work and relationships?
Well, Michael, I'm a brain geek. So I'm just going to start with a little bit of neuroscience. One of the
Right.
things that I think that's really important for leaders is to realize that there's a lot of conversations that are innocuous. So we're not talking about every single conversation. So we'll just reduce the burden and we'll reduce the stress a little bit. But the meetings that you're leading, the critical conversations, the difficult conversations, the one that matters most for creativity, innovation, going to market, how do we play better? How do we elevate, our game or our culture? These are the conversations that matter. And so when we think about how the brain responds to energy, how we respond to the power of words and language, it's really important for leaders to be intentional in setting the tone and tenor from the beginning. So I ask leaders to really think about, what do you want to convey in this conversation? What do you want as an outcome? What do you want the energy to be inside this robust dialogue? And it really starts with the framework. So if you could say, how might we fill in the blank with what you're trying to accomplish, you're setting the tone and tenor right from the get-go. And a great jujitsu trick that I've been teaching Vistage leaders for a really long time is, if it's a meeting that's not impromptu, if it's a meeting where it's like, hey, it's next Tuesday at 9 a.m., send that how might we question ahead of time so that people can subconsciously and consciously start to answer it. So that when they come in, they're already sparked, ignited, and ready to go. So here's the difference. I'll just role play this a little bit.
Yeah.
I can walk in as the leader and I can be like, so, we really need to come up with a new product. And it's really important that we do this, that we stay ahead of the competitive curve. We've been doing the research. You all know this. And that energy is very flatline. It's not that it's bad. It's just that it's flatline. If I were to send an email invite ahead of time with, hey, how might we make sure that we pick the right product at the right time and go to market in the right way to get such an incredible impact? What's going to wow? What's going to work? That is a very different invitation to a much more robust dialogue than, hey, next Tuesday we're going to talk about, picking a product. And so it's just really being intentional in setting the energy from the get-go.
I love the we in that every time. So
Yeah, it's
we're
a
working
magical phrase.
together. How
Yeah.
can we, tackle this together?
Well, what I love about that, so I'm the queen of magical phrases, but what I love about the how might we, and it's not mine, I'm not taking credit for that. It's been around for a really long time. I started using it in the 80s when I was teaching elementary school. And the how might we, the beauty of it, the magic of it is, there's no pressure to solve it today because it's how might. So we're going to brainstorm, we're going to ideate. And then the we, what I love about that at a psychological level is it says, Michael, your voice matters.
Yeah.
So how might we means I want to know what you're thinking. I want to harness the collective intelligence of the people in the room. And that also sends a very different message to your people, that it's not this didactic one-way leadership. It's like, no, I'm actually doing the inclusivity part. Share with me. Let's co-create this future together.
Yeah, I love that. And I love when I'm sitting with leadership teams and I experience that it's really a team and they're not waiting for the CEO or the founder or the owner to tell them what to do.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a whole different, as I would say in California, it's a whole different vibe.
So in one of your speeches, you share that leaders often perpetuate their problems by taking what probably feels like the path of expediency, is how I've experienced it, but it can be somewhat dismissive. And I've heard this often. Why can't you just do your job? Or here's my
Yeah.
favorite. We always have done it that way.
Oh God.
So from my many years of working with CEOs, founders, and others, I've observed that often they don't really get how powerful their voice is in an organization just because of that CEO title. And they don't seem to have the patience to listen, oftentimes because of their busy schedules, to new ideas or how to improve operations.
Oh my
Right?
God,
There's
there's so
the
much to
idea,
unpack.
vision people. So, how would you coach a CEO to help them to gain more awareness and be more effective in this area?
Oh, wow. There's so much there. I think, one of the first things that you're doing is you're triggering a memory for me. So I was working with a gentleman, and I got to laughing. I just got the giggles because he was like, I don't care about titles. Why is everybody so hung up about titles? And I was like, because you're the CEO and your name is on the door. And that's why you don't give a flying fig. But everybody else around here cares about their title. And so
Right.
I think that we become very myopic. We lose sight of what the dynamic is that we're creating. And it would be wonderful, and I say this altruistically, it would be wonderful if nobody cared about their titles, but we're not there yet. People care about their titles. They want to know, that they're advancing in their career, that they're being promoted, that they're achieving their goals, that they're increasing in their responsibility and their ability to impact others. And so one of the things that I remind leaders is that they have a tremendous responsibility for accepting the assignment of care and management for their people. So
Mhm.
if you're going to be in a leadership role, like it's also a bugaboo. I'm sure you've heard this too. Like, I didn't sign up to be a role model. And it's like, actually you did. So like, whether you're a celebrity, you're a leader, you did sign up to be a role model. And so therefore you have to say, well, what are my values? What do I embody? And then what does that look like, sound like, and feel like? And from my perspective, that looks like, sounds like, and feels like the responsibility of making sure that you're conscientious, that you're thoughtful in the way that you respond. And so I often tell leaders, look, you can react. You're human. Your reaction does not define you, but your ultimate response does. So if you have a misstep, if you put your foot in your mouth, that's human. You can apologize for that. You can be like, oh my God, my bad, or I didn't mean to say that, and you can reset. But here's what I'm going to emphasize emphatically. At the end of the day, as a leader, you are responsible for the words that come out of your mouth and the intended and potentially unintended consequence of those words. You have to have responsibility for that, which means that you have to slow down long enough to say, am I communicating clearly? Am I choosing the right words in the right moment to get the right impact? And you're going to hear me beat that drum through this entire podcast, because I really believe that when leaders say, oh, I'm just going to go in and wing it, like I know what I'm doing, 90% of the time that's probably effective. 10% of the time, it can come back to bite you in the butt.
Yeah, I love that. So, by default, if you accept a leadership position, you are a role model.
Yes.
So, embrace it and be intentional,
Yes. Yes.
right?
And that's one of those things where we do so much sales training that I'll often tell salespeople, before you walk into that meeting with the prospect, I want you to set your intention, whether that's prior to the Zoom call, or you're sitting in your car, or you're waiting in the lobby to go meet with somebody. I really want you to be crystal clear with your intention. If nothing else, because I'm not a fan of scripting in sales, but if nothing else, pick that back pocket brilliant one-liner of how do you want to set the tone and tenor of that conversation? What do you want the first words out of your mouth to be? What do you want your outcome to be? Because how that person feels is going to be influenced by the way that you show up and the actual words that you speak.
We in the peer groups, we spend a lot of time working on effective communication as leaders for this very reason, that it don't expect it to happen overnight. Don't think that you can read a book and you've got it. It really is, it takes time for the synapses to form, right? So we have conversations, we have speakers that come in and talk about this, and we practice it with each other.
Yeah, and you just nailed it. Okay, so I'm a big believer in practice. I think leadership is a practice. I think self-leadership is a practice. And I think that one of the things that also allows us to have grace, because leadership is, oh my God, it's an enormous learning curve and we're learning on the job,
right?
Is to give yourself grace, but then to really do that reflection and evaluation and prediction of how you want to play better. So I'll give you a real world story. So I got an email yesterday because we're doing Women Bankers program right now. And one of the women bankers, she reached out to me and she says, I've been told that we're not going to give cost of living increases this year. We're not going to give raises. And I know that people are going to ask about it. They're going to be disappointed. And she's like, do I just dismiss it? Like when they're disappointed, do I just move on and shove it under the rug? And this is a real email that I got. And I wrote back and I was like, technical foul. No, you cannot just dismiss their real world feelings. I said, you need to sit back and say, hey, would you be willing to share more about your expectations about a raise? What were you expecting? It doesn't mean you're agreeing. It doesn't mean you're going to turn your decision around. It means that I care enough when you're disappointed or upset to say, hey, tell me more about your expectations about a raise. What were you expecting? Tell me the thought behind that expectation. Because then when I tell you the thinking behind my decision, we're communicating to connect. We may not agree, but we're communicating to connect. And that's a very different conversation than, hey, I'm upset that I didn't get my raise. Oh, we're not talking about that.
Yeah, it really is taking the outside in approach with your people, as well as with your clients and other aspects of business.
Well, I think it's certainly, I mean, for this podcast, it's way more nuanced than what I'm saying, but I think it's really important for leaders to take one message away from that. And that is, if you can lean into connect first, again, you may not agree, but that person will stay far more bought in and engaged if they feel like they were listened to and heard versus just dismissed.
Yeah, wonderful. So, AmyK, you talked about 5 ways in one of your talks to grow your business: inquiry, challenge, energy, alignment and accountability, and action.
Yeah.
I could not agree more with your list. How have you seen the absence of inquiry and challenge in particular become like regulators on the growth accelerator?
Okay, so let me choose my words carefully here.
Okay.
Growth gets truncated almost immediately when you start to surround yourself with sycophants who aren't challenging your thinking, who are your yes man or your yes woman. And it's interesting because that stems from insecurity, right? So that stems from the idea of either competency addiction, which is the idea of, hey, I was an amazing rock star in 1984, therefore I got nothing more to learn and I'm going to rest on my laurels from that. Or it's the idea of, I'm in charge now, so therefore I don't want to be challenged. I don't want to look vulnerable. And so one of the things that I just remind leaders, especially Vistage, and I love Vistage leaders because they're usually way curious and they're way open to developing in their own growth.
Yeah.
And that is, remember that Socrates, I mean, this is a long time ago, Socrates, who was one of the most wisest and insightful thinkers, was always the first to say, what am I missing? And I love that question because he was vulnerable enough to say, hey, look, I got a lot going on, but that doesn't mean I know it all. And I also know that I see the world through my myopic lens. So, hey, Michael, from your perspective, what am I missing? Hey, AmyK, from your perspective, Doug, Samantha, Sally,
Yeah,
Frank,
how about that?
what am I missing? And so to me, and I don't mean this as a commercial, I mean this sincerely. one of the best things about Vistage is that you put this diverse experience around the table. So when you're in the executive session processing opportunities and challenges, I know what Raj is thinking. I know what Helen is thinking. And all of those are going to influence my ability to make a bigger, better, bolder decision for going forward more profitably.
Yeah, I love that. And the group dynamic, there is something special about that. It definitely accelerates growth. And I love the Socrates perspective on this, because great wisdom stands the test of time. And boy, that's some time between then and now.
Yeah,
so
sure.
Couldn't agree with you more. So a final takeaway, and there have been so many pearls today. Founders, owners, and CEOs are often facing difficult conversations with difficult people.
Never.
In one of your talks, you offered 3 questions to turn a potential confrontation into a conversation. And I thought that was really helpful. That list of 3 things that you can easily keep in mind. I think this will resonate with our listeners, especially those who tend to be conflict avoiders.
Yeah, and they're all context dependent. So I joke I'm the queen of magical phrases, mainly because I learned the magical phrase that I needed after the fact, Michael. But I'm the first to be like, insert foot in mouth, and usually it's like a chunky tennis shoe that I'm wearing, so it's really uncomfortable.
You're not alone.
But yeah, that's human, right? And
Yeah.
I'm notorious for having done it a lot. And so I don't know about you, but like at 3 a.m. in the morning, I'm like, why did I say that in 1994? Right. So I love magical phrases. Again, not a fan of scripting, but when you have a back pocket brilliant one-liner, it can really course correct a conversation, or it can put guardrails a conversation, or it can change the entire outcome so that people are more enticed and more intrigued and more inspired to take action. And so we're all going to have difficult conversations. That's just a part of life. And I think that one of the things that as leaders, if we can show a little bit of vulnerability, not therapy, not inappropriate vulnerability, but just a little bit of, hey, this is hard and it's important, which means this may not be the easiest conversation for me either, but it matters. It matters to us. It matters to the client. It matters to the project, fill in the blank. And so one of the things that I encourage leaders to ask is not why something happened, because why makes somebody feel really defensive. Now, if you and I are sitting on the same side of the table and we're trying to problem solve a project, a process, or something, we can ask 1,000 whys. But when I'm literally looking across at somebody and I'm trying to understand a decision, a remark, an action, I want to reduce their defensiveness. And so I just like to replace why with what was the thought behind, or help me understand. And those are not new, but I'm just going to reiterate that.
Yeah.
And then one of the things that I think that happens with difficult people a lot is they come with this very heightened emotional energy. And so we can often get hijacked. I call it an energy vampire. We can get hijacked by that energy if we're not consciously choosing to stay centered. And so let's just say you walk into my office and you're volatile, like that's never happened, right? Somebody comes in, they're frustrated and they're angry. There's 2 things that you can do, 2 great questions. The first is you identify an emotion and then you ask them if you're hearing it accurately. So I might say, hey, Michael, you sound frustrated. Am I hearing you accurately? Are you frustrated? 2 beautiful things happen here. I'm showing you that I'm listening, but even if I get it wrong, it's totally okay. I need you to verify my interpretation. So I'm willing to be wrong. So maybe you're like, I'm not frustrated. I'm just stymied about what to do. Or you might be like, frustrated. I'm angry, AmyK. And it's like, great, because no matter what you say, I have more intel that's accurate about where you're really at, so I can be a better empathic listener, responder, leader. Yeah. So when I say, am I hearing you accurately? It's okay if I'm not. And then the second question that I love to ask is, what do you need most from me right now? So if somebody comes in and they are spiraling and they're venting, rather than again getting caught up in that emotional energy, I'll say something like, I hear you. You sound really frustrated, and I'm hearing you accurately. Are you frustrated? And they're like, yeah, I'm frustrated. So then I would be like, okay, so Michael, what do you need most from me right now? Now, notice what I didn't do. I didn't try to solve it. I didn't try to fix it because I may be completely off on what it is that they're looking for. And then here's the beautiful thing. Suppose you say, well, I want you to fire, Jane Doe. And I could literally say, well, I'm not willing to fire Jane Doe, but here's what I am willing to do. So I'm still aligning myself with you and working toward a solution. And so all of this is just this beautiful, thoughtful, responsive behavior instead of reacting to the energy in the room.
Yeah. Reaction and challenge from the command and control world of running businesses, being thoughtful and changing our behaviors, changing the way that we interact with people. I think it's a different world that we live in, and one that requires some more thought about how we communicate. But what's number 3?
Well, that is, so it's the whole idea of, I'm going to ask you, help me understand, or am I hearing you accurately? What do you need most from me right now? There's a lot of different questions that you can ask. And one of the things that I also ask, so it's just another example of a magical phrase, is when somebody takes that deep breath and we think that they're done, that's a false assumption. What you want to do is you want to make sure that they've actually had a chance to fully vent, because you don't want something to come back 24 hours later. So what you want to do in that moment is just take a deep breath and say, is there more? Or is there anything else? Or is there anything else that you want to share? Or what else is going on? Because here's what's great. When you put the onus back on them, they have to take that beat to be like, no, that's it. Or, oh, let me also add. And so it's great because, again, you're not stepping in prematurely to say, oh, I think I have it all figured out. Let me give you a solution. And they're like, well, I tried that, or I already said that. And you're like, oh, if I had just asked them what else, or what have you tried, or where are you in this process? So any of those questions work beautifully.
Yeah, I love that. So it's really getting back to what you said earlier, 5 ways to grow your business is practice inquiry and curiosity.
Yeah. And
so it doesn't have to be a formula or these particular
no,
3 questions, but come
no.
up with your own, through inquiry and curiosity.
Yeah. And I think that, again, you nailed it, that if I can be less reactive and judgmental and more curious, the conversation is going to go really differently. And that's again, setting your intention of, okay, I'm going to lead with curiosity and not judgment.
Wonderful. AmyK, we've really enjoyed this conversation today. I've really enjoyed this conversation today. Thank you very much for sharing your wisdom and your experience and knowledge. Hope to be able to have another chat with you in the near future. I'm Vistage Chair Michael Flannery, and you've been listening to Growth Happens Here.